If you saw your absolute best friend dying in front of you, would you turn your back on them at the very end? On August 19, 1957, hundreds of Hollywood elites gathered at the Valhalla Memorial Park Cemetery to say their final goodbyes to one of the greatest comedy legends to ever live, Oliver Hardy. The air was thick with grief, but as the crowd scanned the mourners, a collective whisper rippled through the cemetery. One face was missing. The one person who should have been standing right at the front of the altar was completely gone. For 30 years, Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy were inseparable. Yet, on the day Hardy was laid to rest, his partner was nowhere to be found. Why did the world's most famous duo skip their final goodbye? The answer wasn't a feud. It was a heartbreaking promise. Only they understood. To understand why Stan Laurel was absent, we have to look closely at the months leading up to that devastating day in August. The public knew Laurel and Hardy as the bumbling, brilliant slapstick masterminds of the silver screen. But behind the laughter, a brutal reality was unfolding. In 1956, Oliver, affectionately known to Stan and close friends as Babe, suffered a catastrophic stroke that completely paralyzed his body and stripped him of his voice. The giant jolly man who once weighed over 300 pounds was suddenly confined to a bed, unable to speak and rapidly wasting away. He lost nearly 10 stone, shrinking to a mere shadow of his former self. But what if the tragedy on screen was only half the story, and a darker hidden reality was being kept from the public? Stan Laurel was dealing with his own physical nightmare. Just a year prior, in 1955, Stan had suffered a stroke that left his left side partially paralyzed and his health on a razor's edge. He watched his partner wither away, physically powerless to help him. When Stan managed to visit Babe in 1956, they couldn't speak. There were no jokes or bowler hats. They sat together in a painful silence, communicating only through glances and tight handshakes. It was the last time they would see each other alive. As Oliver's condition grew worse, tabloids started printing wild rumors, claiming the two had grown to hate each other, and that the silence between them was the result of a bitter, unresolved legal war. But then, a secret letter emerged from the shadows of Stan's private life, shattering every rumor the public believed. When the news finally broke on August 7th, 1957, that Oliver Hardy had died, the world wept. But for Stan Laurel, the shock did more than break his heart. It threatened to stop it. As the funeral arrangements were announced, the press prepared for a highly publicized reunion, a final photo op for the history books. Instead, they got absolute silence. Stan refused to step out of his Malibu home. The public was outraged. How could the man who owed his entire career to their partnership refuse to show up for his partner's final hour? Was the legendary friendship nothing more than a carefully crafted Hollywood illusion? The truth is far more devastating than a simple falling out. The real reason Stan Laurel did not attend the funeral was because his own doctors had given him a chilling ultimatum. If you go to that funeral, you will likely die. The immense stress and overwhelming grief of seeing his beloved partner placed into the ground would almost certainly trigger a second, fatal stroke. Stan's heart was already weak, and his body was too frail to withstand the physical toll of public mourning. His wife Ida and his daughter went in his place, carrying a quiet grief that Stan could only experience from his living room couch. But write down your theory in the comments right now. If your doctor told you that attending your best friend's funeral could kill you, would you risk your life to be there anyway, or would you stay behind? To understand the true depth of Stan's devastation and heartbreak, we have to look at the deeply personal, handwritten letters he sent to his cousin, Nellie Bushby, immediately following Oliver's death. These letters, recently sold at auction, pull back the curtain on a man completely shattered. Stan wrote to Nellie expressing that the news was a great shock, even though he knew the end was near. He wrote, "I miss him terribly and feel quite lost. Can't realize that he is gone." He went on to describe the brutal reality of Oliver's final weeks, noting that his partner had suffered a great deal due to a cancer condition and that he felt it was a blessing that Babe was finally taken out of his pain. To his close friends, Stan summarized his absence with a simple, heart-wrenching phrase: "Babe would understand." And Babe did. Oliver's widow, Lucille, knew exactly why Stan couldn't make it, supporting his decision completely, knowing Oliver would never want Stan to risk his life for a public ceremony. But the tragedy didn't end with a missed funeral. In fact, what Stan did next shocked the entire entertainment industry and raised an entirely new question. Did Oliver's death mark the end of Stan Laurel's will to live? Following Oliver's death, Stan Laurel made an unbreakable vow. He declared he would never perform on stage, act in another film, or make any public appearances ever again. For a man who had dedicated 50 years to comedy, this was creative suicide. Hollywood producers begged him to return, throwing massive fortunes at him to get the legendary Stan Laurel back on screen. He was even offered a highly coveted, lucrative role in the comedy masterpiece It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. The film was designed as a massive love letter to the golden age of cinema, featuring legendary comedic figures like Buster Keaton, Mickey Rooney, and Spencer Tracy. It would have been a triumphant return, a chance to secure his legacy for a new generation of fans. But Stan turned it down flat. He wrote to a fan, Glenn Laxton, in a letter dated May 22, 1958, explaining his refusal to step back into the spotlight. In the letter, Stan wrote, "Since my dear partner is not with me, I have no desire to continue. He could never be replaced. For Stan, there was no Laurel without Hardy." To perform without the man who had shared his timing and his soul for 3 decades felt like a betrayal. He chose obscurity over fame, living out his remaining years in a small Malibu apartment, answering fan mail by hand and talking to anyone who called his publicly listed phone number. He didn't want the stage anymore. He only wanted to honor the bond they had created. Think about that level of loyalty. In a town notorious for shallow relationships and stab-in-the-back betrayals, how many people do you know today who would turn down millions of dollars just to honor a silent promise to a deceased friend? Share this video with someone who needs to see what true loyalty actually looks like. Stan Laurel spent his final years keeping the memory of Laurel and Hardy alive, not through new films, but through a personal connection with fans. He refused to let their legacy fade into cynical tabloid gossip, wanting the world to remember the joy they brought. When Stan was nearing his own end on February 23, 1965, while resting in his apartment in Santa Monica, California, his sharp, comedic mind remained entirely intact. Just minutes before passing away, he looked at his nurse and delivered one last joke, telling her he wouldn't mind going skiing at that very moment. Surprised, the nurse admitted she didn't know he was a skier. Stan smiled and whispered that he wasn't, but he would rather be doing that than what he was doing right then. It was a classic Laurel and Hardy beat, a moment of levity in the face of inevitable tragedy. Stan Laurel's final joke was a quiet echo of the laughter he and Babe had gifted to the world. Their partnership was never about the industry, the fame, or the Hollywood funerals. It was about a deep, unspoken brotherly love that transcended the screen and survived the darkest periods of physical decay. When Oliver Hardy passed, Stan didn't need to stand over a casket to say goodbye. Their final farewell had already been spoken in the quiet, shared glances of their last private meeting. If you want to dive deeper into the hidden, bittersweet stories of early Hollywood's greatest icons, make sure to subscribe to the channel and check out the video on your screen right now. Until next time, whose side of this legendary story do you think truly defined their legacy?